Hey guys, welcome back to Chattin with D. Today I got a chance to interview the legendary Dapper Dan. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and let's get started. Chattin with D is where you need to be. So we are here with the Dapper Dan. How are you doing this evening?
I'm doing great. It's such an honor to be here with you today.
Good. We're so happy to have you here. We're honored to have you on this platform, Chattin with D, so thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Awesome. So let's talk about your evolution. You started out as a hustler, then you started selling clothes out the back of your trunk, then you opened up a storefront here in Harlem, partnerships with Gucci, now the face of Gap. It's not even Gap anymore, it's Dap. Talk to us about your evolution.
Well, my evolution I attribute to my parents coming from the South. So I'm the first generation of the Great Migration that came out of the South. So I grew up in a generation that is the last generation that completely exceeded the accomplishments of the people who came before us. You know, after that, it hasn't happened again since then. So I think that is driven to the fact that the strength that took place then. Now, because of the generation that I'm come from, I learned a lot of things that I arrived from people who came from the South. You know, mostly the hustler guys, and so that's the first element of the culture that I took on because opportunities wasn't available for young black men at the time. So I became a hustler, but I didn't like the hustler world and what it brought about. So I decided to find something else to do, and selling clothes became what I like to do. The reason being is because there's something transformative about getting dressed up, going out. No matter where you go, people don't know where you come from, right? So when you put on a new outfit, it makes you feel equal to rather than less than, you know? And so I like that transfer, the way clothes can transform me. So that's why I went into the clothes business. And initially selling clothes out of my car till I was able to open up my own boutique.
Right. And now that has led to endless opportunities, not only for you, but for our community as well. So thank you for paving the way for us. I want to just give you your flowers for that. I want to know when social media first made an uprise back in 2017 about Gucci taking your ideas, what was your reaction to that, and what were the type of conversations that were being held with Gucci to be able to make room for people like us at their table?
Well, I know my reaction to it was like far different from the way young people, your generation was reacting to, because I didn't grow up with social media. So I wasn't a social media adaptee yet, so I didn't know the power that it had. And so everything that I've ever done, and I saw like creations that I was putting out there early on, that major brands were appropriating, but that's what I've always seen growing up, you know, as our culture being appropriated by other people. So to me, it was just another thing. And then this new thing that evolved called Black Twitter, that's when I became familiar with Black Twitter. I said, wow. And so my turning point came to understanding social media is when Black Twitter came out, and it made the big companies buckle their knees. I didn't know we had that kind of power. Right. So in the last 4 years, I've seen a lot about how much power we have because of social media.
Mm-hmm. Right, exactly. And once you first got that partnership with Gucci, I remember, seeing some interviews on you and you're like, I want Gucci to be able to come down here to Harlem and talk to me and make something happen. And so what were those conversations like, and what is being, pushed forward for our community?
Incredible, and I have it all on film. When my son told me, he says, Gucci reached out. I said, quit playing with me, man. He said, no, Dad, Gucci reached out. So to challenge him, I knew it. I said, we're not used to accomplishing things like that, instantly like that. So my son said, yeah, Dad, Gucci reached out. I say, okay, if they're serious, tell them I said, come to Harlem.
Right.
And they came.
Love it.
I said, okay, if they want to have a deal with me, tell them I want to be able to do the same thing that I was doing here in Harlem. I said, I know they ain't gonna do that. Dad, they said okay. You know? I said, wow. And then it all evolved from that. But the turning point came when Alexander Michel came himself.
Wow.
He came to my brownstone over on Manhattan Avenue. And I said, wow, look at this. And here we have him surrounded with a bunch of young people of color. We walked from my brownstone to the Apollo Theater taking pictures. And then one of the great conversations that we had in talking about that, he said, Dan, let me explain something to you. I was paying homage to you. That's what Alexander Michel said, right? And he went on to say, listen, when I was growing up, this is his voice. When I was growing up in Italy, I saw you and LL Cool J in your boutique. And he saw it, and I said to myself, how amazing is that to see two people from two different walks of life. He said, I wish I had a life like that in Italy, because he explained to me like he's a gay guy growing up in Italy and didn't get that kind of representation in the world. It was a blocked door for him at the time. So he said when he had the chance to do that, he was wanting to pay homage to me, and that's how it all evolved, according to Alexander Michel.
Wow, so it kind of came full circle for you and kind of manifested it in a way. And how, being on the streets of the Apollo with people of color representing Gucci and you behind it must have felt so empowering. So I know when I was watching it, I felt empowered as a young black woman as well. So it was
It's a funny thing about power, and which is very important. Power, you have to look at who gives you the power, and this is how it played out. When I had my store open, all the people that catered to the customers that I catered to who came to my store were all low income or hustler people in Harlem, But the low income people, they couldn't get nothing but hats and, belts. But the bulk of my clients came from the hustlers, And so that's who paid attention to me early on. Middle class people of color did not shop with me. They stubbed their nose at what I was doing. The amazing thing about everything, when the brands saw how I took their symbols and just did something with it that had never been done before, and then they were lost. So here we got, right? Fashion is looking for a new direction, all right? But here is evolving a new musical genre. So I came along at a time where there's a new musical genre being born, you know what I'm saying? And I have these new ideas for fashion, and you bring them together, that's something they recognize. The irony of all of this is that the Europeans recognized it before middle class people of color. So I was more popular in Europe because my early magazines were European magazines than I was here with people of color, middle class people of color. But then, as more European designers start taking on what they call me like the father of Logomania, as they more embrace themselves with Logomania, the more people started to look at where did it come from. So as a result of that, I began to become more popular, even with middle class blacks who stubbed their nose, who is now embracing it, and pushing me up the ladder.
Yeah. And, so, you saying that you were kind of at the beginning of hip hop. You've been in this game for so long. So what do you attest to your longevity, and how do you keep yourself current? How was fashion back then versus what it is now?
Okay, that's two questions.
Yeah.
The first one is, how do I keep myself energetic? What I love about my upbringing is that everybody knows how to do good. You don't have to be taught to know how to, adjust to doing good. You have to be adjust to knowing how to do bad. So if you have a bad time and you can survive the bad time, the good times is easy. So I always built, strengthened myself with the idea that I have to start all over again. So I already had my mind trained to start all over again, no matter what happened. That's the first thing. Mm. Now, the second part is like, what was fashion like then and what is it like now? Fashion back like then was locked into our culture. But as the hip hop music genre began to expand, you know, it expanded our perimeter to reach larger audiences. And so I was right in time during what is called the golden age of hip hop to be able to expand as it was expanding.
Yo, Eric, there go Dap over there, man. Let's go kick it with him for a minute. What's up, Dap? So check it out. I want to go into the boutique and check out what you got inside. But before we do that, you want to introduce the next video for us?
Oh, you know what time it is. Grandmaster Flash.
On Yo MTV Raps. Check it out. Let's go inside, man.
So what was happening then in terms of fashion? Fashion then was controlled by a really conservative designers, you know? But I think that came about at a time when individuality became a bigger symbol in fashion, you know? And so what I did to expand on that was like when rappers used to come, I would ask them, you know, how do you feel about your music? I would listen to their lyrics. How do you feel about your lyrics? And I would translate into fashion their whole ideas about who they are. So, like some of my early customers, like Boogie Down Production, when they came, they was talking about Rasta culture. So I made them outfits that look like, you know, the Rasta colors. Then I had Jungle Brothers came. They was into Afrocentric culture. So I would make them outfits in red, green, and black, Afrocentric color. Then Eric B and Rakim came. Eric B was into that swag look. So I gave him the swag look, but Rakim was involved in like the 5% of culture. So in the, you know, religion. So in the back of his outfit, I put the 5% insensitive. So what I was doing is, I wasn't dictating fashion. I was translating culture.
I'm Dapper Dan from Dapper Dan's Boutique, East 125th Street in Harlem, and I'm the designer for the stars.
And so that's what kept me relevant over the years. I do not tell a person how they should look, because you date yourself when you do that. Mm-hmm. So what I do is, like, as the culture evolves, I go with the culture. I talk to the people, you know? So every outfit that I've ever created has been done in collaboration with the person I created it for. I like to equate it with the Harlem River. Fashion should be like that. The Harlem River is always there. Fashion should be like that. The Harlem River is always there, but it's always moving, you know? And to understand the Harlem River, you gotta understand how the current moves. So if you wanna dive in and get out, you know where to dive in so that you know where to get out. And so that's what kept me relevant, you know? Paying attention to the people who are moving the culture forward. So each generation of rappers, they come to me, I sit down with them. I even ask them to walk Harlem with me so we can get a feel for each other. And I just translate what they want to do.
Yeah, I remember when I was coming back from a BET interview, we were coming up to Harlem. Every time my dad helps me out, he likes to get a fish sandwich. So we saw you on the corner at the bus stop, and we were like, hold up, is that Dapper Dan? So it's just nice to see how humble you are, you know, after all these years, and how grounded that you stay within the community and help uplift our people. And I really admire you for that, and thank you for just, you know, pushing forward and making that change.
If you can see it, you can be it. You know, so when we was calling up, all the culture was in Harlem. Before all the middle class blacks and people of color left Harlem, we had all the stars used to come through here, all the popular people, everybody was right here. Right. Then once, you know, the redlining they did away with redlining, that locked us into the community where you can get, buy houses and get apartments in other areas. You know, we began to lose that, you know. And when they also, like, segregation, a lot of things had to do with segregation, all of that changed. So we lost the bulk of the middle class, and almost all of the celebrities and stuff, they left Harlem. So I want to give them a piece of that. You know, I want them I wanted to be able to walk around Harlem in spite of my accomplishments so young people can see me, especially since I'm a part of, a bigger part of the rap generation, you know?
Right, exactly.
I thought that that would help a lot. So I walk a lot, I take the train, I take the bus, you know? I stand on the corner every day in front of my atelier so that I can greet people coming in for. Even when I was with Gucci, I said, listen, I know the people in the community can't afford to buy the things that I'm selling, the Gucci things that I'm selling here in Harlem, but they still can afford to be me, be around me and talk to me. So I made that available. That's why I'm so happy now with the Gap.
Yeah.
Okay, with the Gap collaboration, I said, wow, finally, I can have something that's affordable and significant for the people in the community, so.
And if there do be a dream,
The bigger the dream, the bigger the team.
the dream has to include me.
Anybody know any good jokes?
Otherwise, I ain't trying to go to sleep, close my eyes just to be. And if it do be a dream,
I am New America.
Express yourself.
I hope that that dream's dream is for me to be free.
This is what we do. That has made it possible for me to even embrace more people in my community, you know?
And make that connection and keep it going. I mean, when we pulled up earlier, I saw you on the corner greeting everybody, and it really warmed my heart. And I love how you just stay humble and grounded, for sure. Yeah.
A lot of times that works to my advantage. I stand on that corner every day, getting to know people, people getting to know me. It's like the universe is at work. And I meet so many interesting people that, you know, that I can be a part of what they're doing and they can be a part of what I'm doing. We can share information. It's just so amazing, you know?
That's what it's all about, uplifting our youth.
Yes.
It's all about. So where did the name Dapper Dan come from?
Oh boy, that's the fun part. Okay, growing up as a kid, in my neighborhood, there was a guy named Dapper Dan. You know, his family and my family were really close anyway. So Dapper Dan was in jail. But his friend, Dapper Dan's friend, a guy named Killer, he's the one who taught me all about street hustling. So Killer gave me the name Dapper Dan. He said, you Dapper Dan, you know? So when Dapper Dan came home, he used to hang out with me. And he had got older, his skills wasn't as good, so he started looking up to me and hanging out with me. And then one day he told me, he said, I'm not Dapper Dan no more. He told everybody to call him Tenor Man Dan, because he played tenor saxophone.
Right.
And he told me, you Dapper Dan. You know, that was probably one of the biggest moments in my life, you know?
Wow, now you're carrying on his legacy and
Yeah.
made it bigger.
Yeah, because he was sharp. He was a master hustler.
That's amazing. That's really cool. I never knew that side, so thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So growing up, you know, I want to know what the relationship was like between my grandfather, Ralph Mercado, and my mother, Debbie Mercado. Because I remember growing up, I would hear all these amazing stories of you guys going out dancing, killing it on the dance floor. And so what was your interest in the salsa community, in the Latin community, and how do you kind of tie that into fashion?
Yeah, okay. Here's a big thing that I'd like to share with you. There was I grew up in the 50s going into the 60s, right? So what we call salsa today is a musical form that came out of Cuba. And the jazz musicians from here went to Cuba, hooked up with Cachao and Machito and the musicians down there and formulated what was called then Afro-Cuban jazz. And it swept Harlem, swept. Everybody in my generation, all the African Americans, we all danced Latin, what we called it Latin then, which they call salsa today. Everybody danced. All the clubs we went to, everybody danced salsa, and that's all they would play. In fact, your granddad, Ralph Mercado, the great, he was a part of a group called Showstoppers. It was 11 of them, right? And they promoted Afro-Cuban jazz, which is salsa. Again, I say it's a salsa. And your grandfather was the only Latino doing that. So the influence that we had because of the fusion of the music, jazz and the Afro-Cuban sound, probably growing out of what they call back then the song, you know. The influence that it had on us was strong until the United States shut down Cuba. When they boycotted Cuba, which lasts until today, so that music stopped coming out there. And then the Puerto Ricans, which is a part of the culture, they picked it up and ran with it from there, you know? And so it lost its impact after they shut down Cuba, you know, among mostly Harlemites. And so a generation of us didn't grow up with that, but I grew up with a generation where we all danced. Everybody in my generation danced too. In fact, we thought it was our music. I'm sorry about that. Yeah.
I love that. I mean, anytime I accompany my mom on any of the salsa dances that she goes to, I always see you guys killing it on the dance floor. So
yeah,
and
but, yeah. So you know, there's a song. You got to, if you go back and you look at the culture, right? Take the Drifters. Then you can understand what was happening in Harlem. Especially with me. I grew up in a, you know, I thought the whole world was like that. I didn't know people didn't dance salsa in Chicago. I didn't know black people didn't dance salsa in Chicago, and Atlanta, and all the places where we was at. So we had a unique culture, right? And when you listen to the Drifters, they said there was a rose in Spanish Harlem. You know, I was dancing with the roses. You know, it was a thing, you know, that we embraced each other. You know, I had African-American friends who never had an African-American girlfriend. I had Latino friends who never had a Latino girlfriend. So that's how mixed the culture was. And if you look at even the music, like back then, you know, like Ray Barretto singing, like playing salsa music, we're talking about Watusi, you know, the African culture. So it's all blended in during that period. And then as the Cuban music, the Cuban branch of the music got shut down, it just started taking a different form. To equate it with what's going on today, what I call like the crossbreedings of the culture of people of color, like especially African Americans and Latinos, you find it straight through the history of us being together. If you hear reggae, what do you hear? Reggaeton. You know, so it's always been the same thing that happened in Cuba. It continues to happen. We continue to blend our cultures together because it's all part of who we are in our African diaspora. You know, that creates this culture that we're embedded in today. You know, that's what makes it so much fun.
Right.
Okay, but let's go into something else, right? What I love so much about being a black man is like, even in spite of what happened to us and why we're so creative, when you get stripped, as we always strip in the diaspora, you can't help. People become people through culture, you know? And so when you're stripped of it, you're constantly building on it and building on it. I think that's why our culture is so popular and so powerful. We keep elevating, we keep coming out with different musical genres or twisting the music, putting another twist here, another twist there, and it's a whole Afro-Latino thing, man, that we keep doing. We keep making noise in this world. When I was in Italy, I couldn't believe it. I'm walking around Italy, I hear some bachata. I say, what the hell's going on here, right? And I'm back here, right? And so a guy comes to the store, an Italian guy comes to the store, he said, can you tell me where a hip-hop store is? I said, a club is? You know, the hip-hop generation, I mean, I'm fully embedded in it, but I just don't go to hip-hop. I still like Afro-Cuban music. So I said, I had to think about it. I said, do y'all have hip-hop clubs there? He said, no. He said, no, everybody in Italy is dancing salsa and bachata. I said, for real? You know, so that's the impact that it has had on us, you know?
I love to hear that, and thank you for sharing that story. You know, the two ways I took away from that story just now is how we can keep going no matter what trials and tribulations are placed against our community, and how we're all connected at the end of the day, and music will forever bring us together.
Yeah, music, that just shows you how the vibrations can move, even when there's a language barrier.
Right, exactly.
You know what I mean? You know, I don't know. I don't think none of us spoke Spanish, but all of us danced salsa. Now that just shows you, you know, and so we're connected. We all drum people.
Yeah.
You know,
exactly.
we are drum people. You know, we
Feel it in our souls.
Clavites. You know, we part of the clave, you know what I mean?
Right.
And with the beat. We got to go with that beat, but we get it on. See that? We can't help it.
I felt it. I felt it. So Dan, this relationship that, you know, we have between the African American community and Latin, how does that kind of play into the different cultures, and how does that play in
In itself in fashion?
Right, exactly.
Oh, that's one of my most exciting things I like to talk about. So we discussed earlier, like the evolution of salsa and reggae and reggaeton. But so now let's go in. Remember I talked about how the Dizzy Gillespie and the jazz musicians left from here and went to Cuba and fused that music together. One of the most interesting things about that, and the most biggest factors in fashion for people of color, and for other people for that matter, was that when Dizzy Gillespie and all of them went down to Cuba, they had on zoot suits. And when they went down there with the zoot suits, well, the Afro-Cubans, the Cubans down there, they took on the zoot suits. The Cubans who were down there wore the zoot suits in Mexico, where salsa was getting big at. The Mexicans picked it up, the zoot suit, and took it to California, and they started wearing it years later, and they called it the pachuco. You know, so this thing with fashion actually started with the fusion of the two cultures, because the zoot suit is the first element of the culture that we come out of that had a garment associated with it.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
So the zoot suit, that personifies itself as the beginning of fashion for the Latinos and African American.
Together combined.
So and how like you see Cab Calloway, you see all the old movies. Look at the zoot suit and look at the history of the zoot suit. So the zoot suit is the beginning of what we would call inner city fashion. And this is funny how it came about, right? So when I was doing my research on it, right? We had all these great ballrooms in Harlem. So in these great ballrooms where people be dancing, they do all the flips and all that, the dips and all that.
Right.
So the clothes that they were wearing wasn't like really suitable for it. So they would tie their pants one way, do their jackets another way. So one of the designers here, one of the clothes makers here, said, why don't I just make it like that? And he began to make it like that, and it just took off from there. You know, went to Cuba, went to Mexico, went to California, you know? And so that was a big thing. So when it hit California, the Filipinos was wearing it, the Latinos was wearing it, and the Italians was wearing it a lot. You know, and then there's a big story that evolved from that, which has the same politics behind it that you would find today in a hoodie. Let me show you the difference there.
Okay.
If you wore a zoot suit in the 40s, then we had the war. You know, America was at war in World War II. And they needed cotton to make the suits that the soldiers would wear. So they had this quota on cotton. So if you had a suit and it used a lot of cotton, you know, other people in the culture would get upset with you. And that's what led to the zoot suit riots, because they began to beat up Latinos, beat up African Americans, beat up Italians, and Filipinos, anybody they caught in the zoot suit. Fast forward. So they stigmatized the zoot suits back then the same way we stigmatize the hoodie today. That's why in my collaboration with Gucci,
Right.
my intention was to destigmatize the hoodie. So when you see me with my hoodie on, you're gonna see me with an ascot like I wear now, you know, to show that we are all different kinds. So you saw somebody rob somebody with a hoodie. I had nothing to do with the fact that we wear hoodies, you know? And so I showed that when I wear it in a certain way. And I want everybody to wear it in a certain way so that to elevate the culture. We cannot let them stigmatize what we do, how we do it. Otherwise, we lose.
I love hearing these stories, and you're such a true historian. And the fact that you travel to all these different countries and come back with all these different artifacts and knowledge, and you share your wisdom. I love hearing these stories because it helps me to understand where our people come from so that I can push forward in that and make a change in the future.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's a journey that we should all take.
Right.
It's a journey that leads us to the center of ourselves. Because that's what they took from us.
Right.
They took away the center of who we are when they took away our culture.
So talking about music, culture, let's talk about traveling. You have been all over the world, and briefly off camera, we were talking about your travels to Africa.
Yeah.
So I want to talk a bit about that and, you know, how that kind of intertwines with your fashion and how you get inspired while you travel.
So when I went to Africa in 1973, that's when I got exposed to my second wave of culture, because I had been in Africa in 1968. And in 1973, I did more traveling, but my mind was even more developed. And so I visited 3 countries at that time. I went to, which was the Congo now, but it was Zaire then. I went to Zaire. I went to Nigeria and Liberia. And in Liberia, you know, I had just came back from the International Black Arts Festival where they had all the artists around the world, everybody. Latino artists, African artists, I mean, everybody was there. It was a complete third world event, all people of color. It was amazing.
How beautiful.
So I, coming back from there, when I was in Monrovia, Liberia, there was an African who was selling artifacts at the marketplace. So when I went to buy artifacts from that African, he looked at my clothes, he said, "I like your clothes." I said, "I like these artifacts you got here." I said, "You want to trade?" He said, "Yeah." I ran up into the hotel, got all my luggage. All my luggage, and I traded everything for artifacts and to have him make something for me. So that was the birth of Dapper Dan in Fashion Mint. So what I did then, I used African fabrics, but I had to make up styles like we wear in Harlem. So that was the beginning of what I call Blackanizing fashion or Africanizing fashion. And then later on, in the years after I came back, that would manifest itself in how I translate fashion.
Wow, you're the ultimate manifester. That's awesome. So let's get into what celebrities you've worked with and who you've had the pleasure of working with. Some of my favorite outfits that I've seen that you've produced with Ashley Graham for the Met Gala, where she had Dapper Dan all over her legs with that tuxedo dress. That was iconic. And also working with Jay and Queen Bee on the Run Tour too. How was that? Tell me who you loved working with.
Well, when it comes to working with what I call musical influences, I don't look at them as musical influences. I look at them as collaborators, right? Each and every one of them want to have their eyes, have their style translated into who they are. So the ones that gets me most excited is the ones that take the most advantage of what their personality says about them. One of the ones I would like to speak about is probably Solange, Beyonce's sister. She said, "Dapper Dan, I want you to make me a kimono." All right? And she says, "I'm only gonna wear it one time, and then I'm gonna frame it and put it on my wall." So to me, that was like the highlight of somebody is taking one of your creative works, you know, and not only are they wearing it, they're placing it on the wall in there, wherever it is they're living for people to see, you know? So that's such a bigger story. To me, when fashion can tell a big story, you know what I mean, it expands on what fashion means. So I'm happy about all the artists, you know, like I mentioned, you know, Eric B. and Rakim and Boogie Down Production and Jungle Brothers. I love all the artists who have ever came to me and asked me to translate who they are. You know what I mean? Because when you do that, you can never get stuck in one place with one face, you know? You constantly. So when you terms of favorite, they're all my favorites. All of them who want to be who they are and ask me to help them be who they are, they're all my favorites.
I love to hear that. Well, I'm a big fan of your work, and I guess I'm kind of biased because I love everything that you do. So, so you've made such a big impact on our community, the African American community. What is the type of legacy that you would like to leave behind?
You know what I like so much about what happened with my life? Because of the way society was structured when I was coming up, if you was in fashion, that was the sissy thing, you know? So I'm like this corner guy who was part of the rough part of the culture, and I crossed over and became a designer, you know? And in doing that and accomplishing what I can, all those guys who used to be drug dealers or hustlers or whatever, I mean, today, because I crossed over, we have gangster designers. You know what I mean? Guys who saw this as a way of life. Until now, it's normal.
Yeah, you paved the way.
They have no idea of how it evolved, you know? So, in terms of legacy, that's the most important thing to me, is to be able to open a door to another reality for guys who are stuck on the corner like I was once stuck.
Wow. So you continue to pave the way and you continue to go against the grain. I want to know what's next for you coming up. Anything that you can share with us here on Chattin with D.
Oh, what's next for me now? I like telling stories about what it was like growing up that transforms people. Another thing I learned from my same 9th grade teacher. She said, "What is good art?" And she went on to answer the question. You know, good art or good theater or anything in the aesthetic world has the ability to change who you are, take you apart and put you back together as a better person. And that's what I like when I do. When my book starts off, I talk about all the terrible things I had to go through. And because of that, when you get to the end, you see what it transformed me into. You see that with Malcolm X, you know what I mean? The beginning and the end. So I like this idea of transformation. How do you can take something negative and make it positive?
I just also want to thank you so much for mentoring my brother Devin as he goes throughout his journey, and he's producing beats now and creating his own fashion line, Swoogie. I want to know, what advice can you give to any up and coming young entrepreneurs who's looking to make a way in fashion, who's looking to just leave a legacy behind? What advice can you give?
I think the most important thing that young people need to know is don't get caught up in yourself. And what I mean by that, if you look at the history of what I do is, I don't get locked up in thinking I'm this creative genius. What I do is try to bring the genius out of other people that I work with. So what young people should do is, like, you will get really frustrated with your ideas if they don't take off. But if you embed yourself into the culture, where you're not just giving something to the culture to develop yourself, but you're taking something away from the culture that will help you develop yourself, then that's that interaction that will help you to develop yourself. Now let me give you, for example, like a fashion designer will put out a line, right? And nobody might not like that line, because everything is coming from him and the way he sees it. You know, but if you pay attention to the culture, see where the culture is going, then there's a better chance for you to be successful, because now you're translating the culture, which is what I do, as opposed to dictating to the culture. So embrace yourself into the culture. Get to know how people feel and where they want to go, and help them get there, while at the same time developing your skills so that you can tell your story. So what you young people need to do is tell a story that's out there, you know, and then interface that story with the story you want to tell about yourself, and you'll be successful.
Thank you so much for coming onto my show and sharing your knowledge and your wisdom. I've learned so much from you within this short amount of time, and I'm so excited to get this out so that other people can continue to learn, continue to share your legacy of what you are creating here and developing, and just thank you.
Having you here enables me to pay back, not only to young people, but to people like your father who came before us, trailblazers. You know, so this is a tribute. Being able to do this is a tribute to Ralphie Mercado. You know, and it's me paying that to you, the granddaughter of Ralphie Mercado, and everybody else's granddaughter, and everybody else's grandson. So you and Devin and your sister, y'all amazing. Don't make me cry in here, okay? I'm a tough guy now. Don't make me cry.
Thank you.
Here's what you do.